Greetings everyone, my name is Ettervel, and welcome back to my Let's Play of A Valley Without Wind. In the last part, I was able to defeat the third evil lieutenant, but sadly 2 of the survivors died in the process of getting there. Now before I move on to the 4th and final evil lieutenant, I'll be showing off some bosses that I encountered while grinding for some better spell gems and such. The first new boss I discovered was this yellow/blue wall slime. We saw a variant of it way back in the tutorial with those red slimes being immune to a specific spell gem type. But essentially, these enemies seem to be completely immune to non-background object attacks. These yellow-blue wall slimes are completely immune against water and air type spell gems. So obviously, use a spell gem of any other type and you're fine. The next enemy type I've noticed here is a variant on the Skelebats. We have the Skelebot giant over here, but just below here, when I get there, is this urban predator. Basically, it's a giant ship floating on its nose. It can fire at a spread of ball lightnings or whatever. It has that slow falling flame near the bottom, so you can't just guide through it. It also fires missiles, which you can destroy, but just be careful not to stand in front of the missile while it's being destroyed because of its blast radius. But other than that, those were the main 2 bosses before I fought against the first evil lieutenant. But before I went off against the first evil lieutenant, the evil lieutenant, I decided to show off this situation where I had to explore a house. Yeah, a lot of spike balls over here, and a lot of these urban predator, well, all these urban mechs. The problem here is these spike balls do about 80 to 100 damage per hit, or at least if you run through it multiple times. And so, if you don't have a health enchant, yeah, you can see where I'm going. Your life totals can quickly get depleted fast. And especially if you increase the platforming difficulty, yeah, your life is going to be much more miserable while exploring these places. I visited this place in the first place, mainly because of the cash stored here. Although in retrospect I probably shouldn't have taken the risk and gone this far. As you can see, I'm already in the red. So yeah. If you're going to do this here, make sure to get, especially when exploring these houses, get more health enchants, or get a character with enchants who has a better deflection rating, etc., etc. Anyways, before moving on to summoning the wind shelters, I decided to create all the shape matters, well, use them all so I had the better ratings for all my characters, and off screen I bought another summon wind shelter guardian power scroll. So it's time to start placing each one of these wind shelters. First, starting in this desert area. As I don't remember going through a desert wind shelter mission, I'll be showing this off. Thankfully, it isn't too bad. The only biggest hazard were the enemies and, well, the acid pool. But I'm still wearing the acid gills enchant, so acid doesn't hurt me anymore. So that's nice. The acid gills enchant will be much more important when I get to the ocean shallows and the ocean zones itself. However, the downside of having the acid gill enchant is that I lost the emit light feature of the previous enchant that was equipped in that slot. So when I get to the ocean, which tends to be quite dark because not much light gets in there, especially if you go into the cave system or very low areas, I'll need to use the campfire spell or spells like Ball of Light, or use one of those Ball of Light items to survive. Not really survive, but to know where I'm going, especially at higher combat difficulties so I don't keep running into spikes and enemies. After all, we'll be seeing one enemy type, well actually 2 or 3 enemy types in this part later on, which I quite fear when speedrunning through this segment. And the reason why I see them there is because of the enemy migrations happening from destroying all those enemy lieutenants. Once I reach their native area in the next continent, or the continent after that, ooh, it's gonna be a thing. As you may or may not notice, well, I have not explored the depths over here, in this world. I will not explore the depths in this continent, continent number 2, I'll be doing continent number 3. Mainly as I quite fear what's there. That's where nightmare octopuses and other entropy-based creatures come and not much light. Yeah, it's quite a difficult location if you're not experienced, so I want to save that up for the next continent where I'm a little bit more comfortable. Anyways, on to the next Summon Wind Shelter mission, this time on the Craggy Highlands. Which, as seen before, isn't too much of a problem. The main hazards here are all those earth elementals, the dread gazebos, and the eagles. The bats are a nuisance though, but the dread gazebos, as shown before, can really shotgun you down quite fast. Once I get to the Overlord's journey path, it's going to be more of an issue. The dread gazebos, that is. As you may notice from the name of this part, this is really the path to the evil Overlord at this location. But really, the main challenge will be actually traversing through the entire segment of going to the evil Overlord due to certain things happening not in my favor. But we'll get to that in about 5 or 6 minutes. Right now, back to the Wind Shelter mission here. Thankfully, there's not much of a jerk moves from the RNG, not like what happened in the lava field missions, thankfully. After all, you saw what happened in the lava field mission, getting stuck in lava. I really wish there was an enchant I had that made me immune to lava effects. Even then, I would still have to transform into a bat, or carry enchants with better jump height, otherwise I would get stuck. Or get lava-resistant platforms, of course. And be careful you're not in the pathway of that launch shotgun, or launch rock shotgun upwards. If you absorb all those shots, yeah, I got one-shotted by some of my characters in the test run because of that. Especially at higher difficulties. Anyways, now we're on to the area where we'll be facing off against the evil lieutenant. It's here I decided that, well, just like in the last part, I'll be traveling up the tower as a bat, so might as well turn into a bat here so I can skip most of the environmental hazards at the bottom. After all, traveling through the Craggy Highlands on foot, especially with the dread gazebos and crashed land speed rovers, which we'll see soon enough, is quite annoying. Here we are in the tower, and really the only thing of note here is all the stinging nettles and the bats. It's not as difficult in the last one where we had all those skelebats and other enemies. Here the bats are a minor nuisance, though I probably should have gotten more mana enchants to speed up my mana regen. Anyways, the fourth evil lieutenant is, in a second, Neirokami, the giant blue amoeba. It's weak against water and entropy. Oddly enough, I would expect the giant blue amoeba to be immune to or resistant to water-based attacks, but apparently it's weak against it. Oh well. That's a benefit for me, as my favorite spell gem right now is the Launch Ice Block, and that of course is a water-type spell gem. I really wish there was a launch or Icy Whip or something. I don't think there is, and too bad this game doesn't really have modding tools or a modding community. I would really like if more people could mod in new types of monsters and whatnot. Anyways, during this mission in between the evil Overlord and evil Lieutenant, where I was trying to upgrade my spell gems, I encountered a new boss type here, an Elder Black Bull. And unfortunately, the level RNG was kind of a jerk to me here and spawned me right in front with those 2 giant blue amoebas and the Elder Black Bull. If I was low on health, or if it was a Deepwoods Gargan, like what happened back in Content 1 several parts ago, I would have instantly died. But thankfully, I was able to dodge and weave and able to corner all these giant blue amoebas. And thankfully I have skills like the Cleft Smoglet, or Clinging Factor. Just like before, it seems to be weak against water for some reason. Anyways, back down to the Elder Black Bull. The Elder Black Bull is just like a bull. If it sees you, it'll charge at you. And it seems to leave all these entropy flames behind it. In this case, its weakness was earth-based attacks, but it was resistant against entropy-based attacks. Also, after this, I was able to get a battlefield mission on the icy fields, so I'll be showing it off as usual. We have the usual barricades from before, but this time we have another enemy type that's quite annoying here. Well, we don't have it here thankfully, but later on we'll be fighting Crash Landspeeder Rovers, which has those entropy missiles, and like that one, it does a ton of damage. Here, at least I have my allies acting like a shield, but soon enough I won't have anything, so not anything but myself. So just like before, just fight the enemies, command your allies to move forward, and you should be fine. Really though, the battlefield missions don't really get more difficult based on their environment. Well, maybe except ice field and lava fields if you don't have the appropriate heat suit or snow suit. Unless you turn up the combat difficulty. That's the main thing it's affected by. And we'll be seeing that in Continent 6 or 7, how different it becomes. But as I was saying earlier, I wish this game had a more thriving modding community so we can have more creative enemy types. We already have a haunted patio attacking us, like the Red Gazebo and whatnot, so I can think of a lot of other crazy creatures that could be there, but sadly, even though I tried, there's no way to mod in new creatures to randomly come in. We have ice bats, fire bats, entropy bats, but you can't just mod things like, I don't know, lightning bats, or ice gazebo or something. Even palette swaps, so that's kind of unfortunate. I really wish it was if Arcen Games provided the tools for modding this, or a player was able to reverse engineer the game's format to create a modding tool for it. But unfortunately for the former, Arcen Games, well, they don't really have enough time and money for this, so that's unfortunate, and this game didn't really get popular enough for entrepreneurizing players to reverse engineer it. In this part, what I'm basically doing is raising the mood levels and skill levels of my characters so I can actually reduce the levels of the evil Overlord. For this case, we have an adventurer, but unfortunately, what ends up happening is it's not really ideal. Remember when I said there's kind of an RNG factor? At the current city building level, the max success rate of Evil Overlord attack mission is about 75%, and the survival chance is 85%. The problem is though, sometimes the RNG can really mess you up, and depending on the city builder level, the survival and success rate will decrease. The higher the difficulty, the less the chance, and the more you need to equally balance your other mission survivors. As you see here, if you don't send the other survivors on the mission, then the current survivor will send on the Evil Overlord mission, or other missions will feel like the burden isn't being shared, so their mood will drop more sharply. Whereas if it was more evenly distributed, their mood wouldn't drop as sharply. This will become much more crucial during the higher city building difficulties. Or of course you can just use a lot of rings and skill sets, or skill books, but that costs quite a bit of conscious shards, and that adds up quite fast. Sadly, we lost our adventurer, but we removed 2 levels, so I decided to just go for it and go to Evil Overlord's location, even though it's 3 levels higher than the world level. So I'm basically fighting level 13 enemies, and yeah, this is going to be quite of a problem. And normally I would have put the Evil Overlord's castle run through in this part, but it took so long to get through here that it was not very possible and I had to split it into 2 parts. Getting through all these enemies to the Evil Overlord, that was a very large challenge, mainly because of 2 enemy types really, and well, 1 other type. The Dread Gazebo, the Crash Landspeeder Rover with its miasma missiles, and you'll see soon enough the Deepwoods Gargan. The problem with going to areas 3 levels higher at this combat difficulty, even though it's an average, is that enemies do have a lot more health, or quite more health, and they do more damage to me. This is not too much of a problem with enemies who focus more on tankiness and easy to avoid attacks, but it is much more a problem with enemies which have much more damaging attacks. Like, for example, the Nightmare Octopus's entropy missiles, and especially the Crash Landspeeder Rover's entropy missiles. If you get hit by it and the explosion, it does a huge amount of damage relative to my life pool here. What this means is, though, I can only afford to take a few hits before dying, so for the most part I'll try jumping right past them. Of course, this is not always possible because the positioning of the rifts, the teleportation rifts, as well as the dread gazebos, which, because the higher damage, they're much more devastating if you get hit by them. And of course we have the eagles returning, which are so much of more of annoyance here, because before they did low damage, but now they do medium amounts of damage. And because they travel so fast, it makes them even more of a problem to take care of. And of course we also have these sea worms over here, which can range from the small size to large size, and can change forms. And of course they can also speed up. How joyful. That's why, while traversing through these regions, I decided to edit out the parts where I was running back to home base, or the settlement to recover, and came back here. At least for the most part. And here's the Deep Woods Gargan. Time for my revenge. At 3 levels higher, all those shotgun earth shells, you saw how dangerous they are from a dread gazebo. Now just imagine getting hit by so many of them at once. I made one critical error here, and that was forgetting that I actually had the ability to go under the acid pool without taking damage. And there's a Nightmare Octopus's entropy missiles. Of course, that's much less scary than what the Gargan was doing here. And because of my critical error, it actually costed my life of this survivor. As you can see, I should have stayed in there, but I made a critical error and she died. So yeah, sped up footage of recreating new character. Deep Woods Gargan is still, I haven't got past unscathed. I'm still able to kill it though. But yeah, 3 levels higher, very devastating attacks from all enemies. It does make it much more of a challenge run. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could go to the Evil Overlord without reducing its levels. In fact, if the city building level was higher, the Evil Overlord could be 10, 15, or 20 levels higher than the world level, which adds to the difficulty of having to reduce it. Just imagine going through these areas at 20 levels higher than the actual average. Oh, I would have to basically avoid all the enemies. Just imagine that. I'll probably have to just go into use the Transmorgify Bat Scroll, fly up and avoid everything. But then again, it'll take a lot more damage, and one hit would basically end me. Unless, of course, I had a certain character set. I'm not too sure. And if I really wanted to, maybe I'll do this in one continent just for the joke of it. You can actually just go after the Evil Overlord immediately and avoid all the fighting evil lieutenants. Just imagine what it would be at maxed out city building settings where the Evil Overlord is supercharged by 20 or 25 different 25 levels, plus the 4 Evil Overlords being alive, add 4 to that. Just imagine how epic of a run that would be. I would like to do that in multiplayer especially and see how it goes. That would be quite an interesting thing, though that would be much more of an endurance run and a perfect run technically, because one hit would end me. Anyways, here's a repeat of all these sea worms, the eagle storms, and everything else. Like I said, the eagles are so much more of a nuisance than a problem. Although really the Crash Landspeeder Rovers have the honor of being the demonic spiders. Seriously, I found fighting these Crash Landspeeder Rovers more difficult than actually fighting the Evil Overlord itself. Think about that. I dread fighting Evil Overlord or even Evil Lieutenant version of these Crash Landspeeder Rovers. Just imagine having to face off and avoid all these entropy missiles. I tried doing this defense supply depot from Meteor Storm mission, but, well, it didn't really work out too well. Before that, I decided to rush back to base as I was running very low on health. Then I came back. And here I tried it, although this was pretty much not a good idea. Essentially, the main problem was I could have done this, but there was a crashed land speeder rover to the right side of the screen, so I couldn't access the last two supply deposits, so they got destroyed. How joyful. Even if it was on the normal difficulty, aka the level was the same as my character or just one above, I still have a lot of problems facing off against this. Which is why I'm so looking forward to eventually getting the shield spells, which shield your health using your mana pool. That'll make traversing through these regions much simpler. Especially when I get the effect of having mana regen being greater than my shield usage. And as usual, the meteorites, when upon impact, do quite a bit of damage, but with 3 levels up, even more damage. And there we go, defeated. It was inedible. Anyways, back to the mission and back to traversing to the evil Overlord. And as always, I'll always be trying to avoid and trying to jump over these, but remember, contact damage is dangerous. And time to face off against the second overworld bosses. This time we have to face off against a lot of green fairies, which in comparison to the Deepwoods Gargan is much more of a cakewalk. Sure, they do a fair amount of damage, but when comparing against the Deepwoods Gargan and the horror I face with all those shotgun earth shells, this is much more of a cakewalk and a relaxing stroll. Especially considering how small they are and how low health they have and relatively easy targets to face. In fact, I would say this red gazebo is even more of is the greatest hazard of this fight. Although its main hazard is kind of mitigated by this hill over here and guiding all these shotgun earth shells into it. And this Nightmare Octopus. Nightmare Octopuses actually originate from the Depths region, approximately, but it moved out of it mainly because of defeating all these evil lieutenants, and considering that this evil Overlord Keep is very close to a Depths location. And really, I didn't even need to place that platform. And here's where I had to encounter the huge issue. Here's the evil Overlord's castle's opening. Now, the issue is we have a crashed land speeder over here. So I thought, hey, let me just jump over it and I can enter the castle and open up a rift and be good. Nope. We have these two red gazebos here. And encounter now a large problem. We have 2 sets of shotgun shells following us, and the crashed land speeder rover fires those 2 sets of entropy missiles at a time. Considering how much they do a high amount of damage in combined, you can quickly see the problem with facing this. Especially as I don't really have enough mana to keep alternating between the 2 attacks in order to defend myself. And as I said, I don't have a shield spell to absorb the shotgun. I couldn't really go to the... well, I could have gone to the right, but I didn't want to risk facing off against another crashed land speeder rover. Or another tough enemy. And yep, here it is. So I decided I had to go left, but I basically got stuck in a rock at a hard place. So at this point I thought it was going to be the end of this character. But then I realized I basically had a glyph exit scroll. Or whatever it's called. Basically, it's a very rare scroll which allows you to escape to the world map regardless of where you're in. even if you're in a boss fight, I believe. So I used that, and I was able to escape with the survivor's life, which is amazing, as I thought I was going to lose it just by before, but due to luck, due to raiding some of those golden stashes, I was able to find it. I believe you can also buy them from the supply store, from the Alari, but they're very, very expensive. I think they cost 20,000 or 50,000 shards. So use them when you're extremely, really want to be sure that you don't want to lose your character, or you lost too many characters already. Especially considering you can actually get some completely ace characters, not shown here, due to re-rolling the dice multiple times. Oh, and if you take too long, enemies start to respawn, shown over there. But yeah, we're at the cusp of actually getting to the evil Overlord's castle's entrance. It already took a lot of effort to get over here, and at one death. Considering it's still over 3 levels above, I think I did fairly well. And at this point I decided the strategy was to just stay a little bit outside the screen of where the Crash Land Speeder Rover is, and alternate between using the Ivy Whip and the Launch Ice Block. And then moving on to destroying the last 2 Dread Gazebos. It's much less of a problem if you can actually run left of the screen. But there we have it. We're finally cleared up most of all the enemies in the entrance, so we're all set for going against the evil Overlord for now. So in the next part, I'll finally enter the evil Overlord's castle. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Toodles!